Ooh, I don't know what you're going to be today. This is
I
always
love
like,
this part. I
it's so
love this
interesting
part.
because I come up with the alliteration before we even log on. So it's like I
Oh,
manifest you in a certain way. Like I don't wait and see what your vibe is. I just do it, you know? So
okay.
I don't know what it's going to be today. So buckle up.
The Hollow Buddy. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. I'm Kristen Ziman here with my armed and articulate co host. See, that's like a nod to your profession.
Armed.
What do you think?
Oh, thanks. Okay.
Yeah. Or you could also be armed with golf clubs because you are golfing in Cabo. So you could really be armed with anything you want.
True.
So our listeners can read into that, as can you. We are former police chiefs who have seen a lot of examples of leadership, both the kind that fills the room with substance and the kind that's all shine and no depth. So the Hollow Bunny is our metaphor for those leaders who look the part but lack the substance. They are the empty suits of this world. And today, Sylvia Moir, we are talking about real leadership, the kind that is built on courage, on competence, and on character. And this show
Yes.
isn't just for cops. It's for anyone looking to lead with impact, to challenge the status quo and fill their own bunny with something meaningful. So what is the topic today?
Well, it's not only about filling, Kristen. It is about stepping into courage. It's about examining self. You say it all the time. Throw spears, right? Reflect on self.
Those fears.
Let's really solidify our character. Let's do the tough stuff so that we lead with substance, right? And make a difference. And
Yeah.
today we're talking about something that's really tough. It's about, we've talked about navigating crisis, but what if, as an executive, you are the focus of the difficulty, the crisis, the spotlight? What do you do? So we're going to talk about not only some quick hits about what you do. I also think we pull the thread on what do you do maybe as a second in command or in the executive team? And then what's our responsibility outside of that primary ring as a fellow executive to support the person that's in the spotlight? When you can kind of be off stage using a Jake Ziman kind of behind the curtain kind of look, what's your role there? I think we need to talk about that as well. So we're going to give our listeners
Yeah.
something juicy and meaty and worthy of their time.
Okay, I like this. What happens when something goes wrong on your watch and the
Ooh.
world is watching you?
Well, and maybe that thing didn't go wrong, but somebody outside of you puts it into the spotlight and says it's wrong. There are examples where a leader comes into the spotlight where their character, their leadership, their strategy, policy, culture they're building in an organization comes under scrutiny. Now, that could be healthy. You put it under scrutiny and you examine and you deconstruct, examine, and reconstruct for the strength of the issue. What if it's something that really challenges your character? So that's a big, big deal. And I want to pull on this
Yeah.
think because they're instinctual responses and then they're responses we're going to urge folks to consider.
Yeah. So this is good because we're also talking about two different things here. I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things is what happens when something goes wrong on your watch and
Yeah.
you are the one who's standing at the podium. It may not be your fault, but you are responsible. But the thing that you're pulling on here is it's actually the leader who makes a decision and your team is watching you, your stakeholders, internal, external. Is that am I picking up what you're laying down?
You are. And in addition to that, what do you do when perhaps it is a condemnation of you or a question about you as a leader? There's one in Northern California and one in Southern California where the actual chief of police is coming under scrutiny for actions that they've taken. And so
I
I
see.
think
Yes.
it might be more appropriate for us to focus on that.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. And so the instinct that you brought up is it feels like protecting the instinct that feels like protecting your organization is actually perhaps protecting yourself, and your team is watching you and they know the
Ooh,
difference.
for sure. And there are times when silence, saying nothing, is appropriate because it's like, this is so ridiculous, such a distraction from the actual mission of the organization. In our case, it is safeguarding people, it's reducing harm, it's handling calls for service, investigating cases, and really bringing justice to the forefront, right? It's policing specifically in communities and serving people and building trust. However, there are some actions that are brought into the spotlight. They have nothing to do with the way that you're managing the organization. So, are you cool if we kind of touch on that? Because that's what our listeners are saying.
Yeah.
Okay, what would I do if I was? So this is what folks are saying. What would I do if I, as the chief executive, was in the spotlight for something that really didn't have to do with work, but has become a distraction? And what you're saying is, how do you go when the crisis lands at your feet and it's about you?
Okay. Well, that question that you just asked, what happens when maybe it's not work related, but the spotlight is on you? That's very interesting because that now we're talking about character, or there is something. The way that I view it is this, is I was always told, don't do anything on or off duty that you wouldn't be proud of if your mom knew about it or it made the 5 o'clock news. Those were the two prongs by which I tried to model, like, what would my mother think of this? So there's that.
Oh,
And
Vicky.
then there's, oh, Vicky, I know, God rest her soul. And then there is also the thing that perhaps a leader makes a decision and it is scrutinized by the public. And I always found this interesting because I felt like whenever I made a decision, either my police department was gung ho about it. They were in my corner. And then usually that meant the community was not. It's like keeping these plates spinning of stakeholders is, who do you want to please, or who do you need to please? What stakeholders are involved? But for me, it comes down to one simple litmus test that I have tried to apply over and over. And let me lay this down, and then you tell me if it fits the scenarios that you're thinking of. And the litmus test is this: am I doing the right thing for the right reasons and at the right time? And if I am able to answer yes to all of those three things, then then people are just going to have to criticize, condemn, what have you. I stand firm in my convictions as long as it passes through those three tests. So tell me, does that litmus test work in the scenario that you have in mind?
It works. And as I think frameworks are helpful. We know frameworks are helpful. Yours is, could you repeat it again? Am I doing the right thing at the right time?
Am I doing the right thing? Now, let me put a caveat in there. Am I doing the right thing for the organization? Because I know that you have worked for leaders, as have I, who do the right thing for their cronies, for themselves. They, all of the, that's just a selfish way of leading. So I'll repeat it. Am I doing the right thing for the organization, for the right reasons, and at the right time? And I know there've been times in my career where I know I've been doing, I chose to do the right thing for the right reasons, but maybe the timing was a little off. So that's why it's got to go through those three gates. And so I'm curious if that could be potentially a catch-all for this decision making. And then that allows us to perhaps take the scrutiny and say, okay, I feel it. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. However, I've done the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, and I stand firm in my decision.
Well, typical of us, we're going to give folks a number of frameworks to consider. Yours is strong because it's aligned with high values, and it is aligned with your character. There are two others that may inform that someone could select off the shelf from the Hollow Bunny and apply whichever one is right for them. And one is, Socrates, when we're talking about speaking, Socrates offered that there are three gates that every thought should travel before it comes out of your mouth. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? That is important to consider when we're talking about how much we speak. The framework that I consider with this, in terms of this ethical muscle that we flex and the crisis being upon us, and the focus being upon us, is one that I learned early on from California Peace Officer Standards and Training. And it was this test of, is the bell, the book, the candle? And they said, okay, the bell, is there an alarm that goes off when I'm making this decision or taking this action? The book is there a policy, a law, a statute that governs this decision that I'm about to make? So the bell, does an alarm go off? The book is there a policy or law? And the candle, can it withstand the light of day? And so I think frameworks are powerful because they give us something to put these things through so that it kind of cascades in the organization and puts it through that decision-making funnel. So I think your process is sound. The bell, the book, candle. It's sound. And when speaking about it, Socrates, right? Socrates.
Socrates, bro.
Socrates.
Okay, there's also something that I want to point out here that we have not brought up. And this is about leadership in and of itself. Every decision you make is going to be subject to review by your board, by your team, by the public, by media, by social media. And we have to remember that scrutiny is not the same as being attacked. And we need to learn the difference. And once we do, we'll respond. We won't respond like it's a threat.
Say that again. Underscore, copy, paste, say it again. Scrutiny.
Scrutiny is not the same as attack, and we need to learn the difference. And once we do, we'll respond to everything differently. We won't respond to everything like it's a threat. And I want to make sure that people understand that, because when people take a leadership role, they don't always think this through. They perhaps fall on policy, or they think it's going to be a lot easier. And yet it's not. The higher you climb, the less privacy you have about your judgment calls. And leaders who cannot tolerate scrutiny actually create cultures of silence around them, and no one tells them the truth. So I just think it's important before, especially we have a lot of aspiring leaders that listen to, and I mean in the formal sense of rank title, a lot of people who aspire to move up in their organizations, and leadership is not for the faint of heart. And so if you've got some thin skin, here's $5. You need to go buy some thicker skin.
Yeah. Put something on it. Let's get this going. Okay. So what are the actual strategies? I mean, there's you talked about face saving, right? We talked about, okay. So when do you speak up? I'm not sure there's an exacting kind of trigger when you speak up. I experienced one where I was like, this is the most ridiculous statement that went out to the media. Somebody wrote an anonymous letter about something. I thought, this is so ridiculous, and none of it's grounded in fact at all. But it kept going and going and going. And when it lasted like 4 days, on the 5th day, I just said, okay, let's go out and talk about it. Talked about it in the media, spoke up, spoke truth, challenged it, didn't spin anything. It just went out, and then it was over. But it was painful for like 4 days. So is there a ticker? Is there a sense of knowing when you go out and speak about it? Because most of this stuff is such utter bullshit. And it's not even, there's one kernel that's true. You went to a place, but these things that were asserted never happened. And so, okay, talk to us.
Okay, so this is a really great question that you have just posed, is when to know if silence is actually the stronger move, is what you're actually asking. And that not every accusation deserves a podium. And
whoa.
Sometimes
Julie Parker's going to steal that, because that's bitching. Julie Parker, beep, beep, beep. Julie.
Here's where my thought goes here. Yeah, not every accusation deserves a podium. Okay, here's where my thought goes here, is that I have often thought that responding to everything signals insecurity.
I
Like
agree.
when someone criticizes or
Word.
when there's a social media post, you know, when people get on social media and then they just start, just defending themselves. I'm like, stop. And
Just-
this is where I come from. Who is it coming from? And maybe as we work through this, there's a couple things I think that we need to,
Origin.
yeah. Who is it coming from? Because you and I talk a
Yeah.
lot about the critics who sit in the cheap seats and they criticize and they offer nothing of value themselves. And I only take criticism, as I have mentioned before, from people who are in the arena. I will only take criticism from people I respect. Now, that's a cop out because as we sit in leadership positions, there's going to be scrutiny from all kinds of cheap seats, our community and people who aren't doing the thing, and they're still going to. So I don't think I'm allowed to get away with that as if I'm calling myself on that bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So I do think, okay, so maybe then we go with intent. Maybe, intent does matter. If someone is scrutinizing and they're trying to it's constructive, but that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
We're not. And so I think that's bullshit too. That's like, so with all due respect, that's like an intro to I'm about to be an asshole. And I think you should, I reject that second notion you made as well.
Yeah.
I reject it because it's like, I don't think people have good intent for the most part. You know, the people that have good intent for you that are going to provide you input because they love you, they believe in you, or they're inspired by you. They want you to be better. Mm-hmm. Those are the people you listen to. Okay, so let's just go there.
Okay.
The rest of it's noise. We're talking about the noise.
Okay. We're talking about attacks. We're talking about attacks from people. So here's what I think. A couple things come to mind. Or go ahead. Or what?
Or something has happened and you have to address it. So there's an open allegation against a Northern California police chief that there was a hit and run on duty, that they clipped lightly a car like mirror to mirror and they fled the scene. So it's become this big thing. Oh, this must reflect your integrity. This must be a thing. The California Highway Patrol investigated. There wasn't a there, but now it's becoming a there. And it's a distraction for that chief and for their organization. That's kind of the thing that we're talking about. Something like that.
And I'll throw another scenario on here as well.
Please.
There's a chief here in South Florida whose department voted no confidence against this chief. And they wrote a list of things which brought them to that conclusion. And the lies that were posted in this no confidence vote, the allegations, I should say, were completely false. And so then the question became, do I respond to this because it made it into the media? And so now constituents are reading this and saying, wow, is this stuff really true? Does this chief go line by line and, defend each of that? So let's using both of these examples, let's work through this. So here's what I think. Timing matters a lot. If you speak too fast, I think you look reactive, and that's where that insecurity comes from. But if you speak too slow, well, then you look guilty. And so that's where I think the sweet spot is we need to know the difference between a response and a reaction. And responding is good, but a reaction is not. And then I think if we decide this does warrant a response, I think that we need to lead with truth and not feelings. The moment that it sounds like you're protecting your ego or defending your honor, you've already lost the room.
100%.
Now, there is something to, perhaps there is a nugget of truth or there is validity to the criticism. And that point, name it. And I think once you name it, fall on the sword, it disarms the attack, and that signals confidence. Do not over-explain. I think a leader who explains too much looks like they are trying to convince themselves. So say what's true and then shut your mouth. And then separate facts from narrative. One more thing comes to mind. Pick your platform deliberately. Should you hold a press conference? Should you just put something in writing, a town hall, a one-on-one? each sends a signal before you even say a word. And I think the wrong platform undermines the message. So I'll stop right there, but those just kind of spewed off of my brain.
All of that absolutely important, because you have said that the cover, any kind of cover, expands the crisis. Silence becomes the headline. There is the sweet spot about speaking to the points. My mom used to say, he has protesteth too much. I think it was Shakespeare.
Yes.
And she said,
Yeah.
if you protest too much, and I have seen that over and over, to your point. The other piece is be brief, speak to the actual issue, and move on. There is a movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, called The American President. Martin Sheen is the chief of staff. Michael Douglas is the president. I love that movie so much. I've watched it 100 times. Okay, so there's a point where Michael Douglas lost his wife as the president. She died. And he is dating Annette Bening, who is a knockout. He's dating her. In this, Martin Sheen says, look, they're playing pool. And he says, look, these things are coming up. You have this girlfriend, and she did these things in her earlier life, and it's going to be hard for us, and the polls are going to suffer. And Michael Douglas, as the president, says, well, how much are the polls going to suffer? And they have this conversation. He finally slams down his pool cue. He goes, I don't care how the polls suffer. But it expands, where then later Annette Bening says, look, I should just separate myself from you and not end our relationship and not be in a relationship with you because it's tough for you as a president. And he has a moment. And in this moment, he steps up and he says, look, I've loved two women in my life. One died to cancer, and one, she protested something, burning a flag earlier in her life, exercised her rights under the Constitution. Why wouldn't I love a woman like that? And he speaks to it, but there was this long silence where he didn't address it. I think about that often when these things occur. What is the sweet spot? I'm not sure we can offer in this podcast or in life an exacting as to that. There's a sense. And what we would argue is surround yourself with people that are going to speak truth, that are going to give you input, say, okay, here's the issue. This is what needs to be addressed. And you have these interactions with them based on courage, based on wisdom, where you decide as a team, you as the ultimate decision maker, when you speak, what platform you use, and what you address.
I could kiss you right now for bringing up one of my favorite movies of all time. So a big smoochies to you.
Smoochie.
And I have such a mad crush on Annette Bening in that movie.
I know.
Like, so hard. But
I'm going to say my mom and Annette Bening look like twins. And how she was in that movie. That was my mom, Patricia. My mom, knockout. It's a little weird for me, but
privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not have the privilege of meeting your mother, but let's just say she probably was a MILF then.
She was. She was the original.
Sylvia McCrae Moir, you literally nailed it with this example. That scene, please, listeners, go watch The American President. And this scene that Sylvia talks about, President Shepard walks into the press room unannounced. And he does something that he absolutely refused to do for months because he didn't want to dignify this bullshit with a response. But his team was saying, and I think it was his chief of staff was saying, you need to fight back. And he resisted, but he finally fights back. But he doesn't fight back defensively. He owns who he is completely. And then he goes on offense. He acknowledges every single attack. He admits every label his opponent has pinned on him. And then he reframes each one as a badge of honor rather than a vulnerability. And here is the most powerful part of his speech. He goes on to tell that room that being president is entirely about character. And that's the very ground his opponent chose to fight on. And then he closes by announcing two bold policy decisions that pivot that pivot from defense to action. This is a perfect example of a leader under scrutiny who stops managing the narrative and starts leading the fucking narrative. He doesn't explain. He doesn't apologize. He declares. And here's his strategy. The strategy is simply this. He acknowledges the attack directly. He owns it completely, which thereby removes its power. And then he pivots from defense to offense with a concrete action plan. And then he closes by reasserting his identity and not arguing it. That is the blueprint for speaking up.
Right? We should just shut up and push play and say, all right, Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast listener, look at this, listen to this, because it is absolutely mind blowing. And it's like, he's going to say, okay, here's what happened. Here's the truth. And then he talks about the policy. And then what he does in a ballsy ass move is say, some of you are going to condemn, basically, some of you are going to condemn that the president, his wife died and he's got a girlfriend. Yep. And then he talks about her character, her values, and her commitment to service in the nation, and the nation broadly, the Constitution. I thought, holy shit balls. That is like the wow lesson for everyone in terms of how to lead through difficulty and when to speak up.
Yeah.
Right?
And don't you think there's also something really important about owning, also if there is truth to it, about owning it and taking the label? And here's why I say that is because we live in a time right now, and I'll just use the leader of the free world as an example, who will not admit fault, who deflects, and never have I ever seen any kind of humility that suggests maybe I got that one wrong, or perhaps I didn't think that through, like by taking to war or something. Maybe I didn't have a strategy. And I say that because I think that also people still have this idea that owning what you have done wrong is a weakness, when actually leaders who admit fault first, and even before someone calls them on it, they actually gain trust. And and everyone else is just managing damage. But I think that's what separates true leaders from those hollow bunnies, are the ones who say, man, I was so off on that one, and I want to revisit it. I want to pivot, and I was wrong. Simply put, I was wrong.
Well, right. And the word of the day for that description is obfuscation. I'm not going to address and name what is out there. I'm going to kind of deflect. Obfuscation. It's like, really just answer the fucking question. So I think you have really brought out, to name what you know and what you don't is a position of strength and courage. And look, show people, demonstrate to people that you've considered this. This is about the organization, the mission, and advancing more than protecting self and position. Speak truth when confronted with things and say, look, there's this thing that's out there. There might be pieces of it that are accurate. There are pieces that are inaccurate. It is not a position of strength for me to pick every single piece apart. One must know and then drive forward, right? And you're talking about...
Let's also, if we can, go back to that word that you use, because you never fail us by pulling a big word right out of your pocket. And I love that word. I love that word, obfuscation, because it's actually more insidious, I think, than lying, because it's deniable. You didn't lie. You just didn't make it easy to find the truth. And leaders who obfuscate, they're technically honest, but they're functionally deceptive, and
it's
their
bullshit.
Teams know it. People can, it's total bullshit. People can read right through it. It buys time and it destroys trust simultaneously. And so nobody ever says I lie. I was not able to share that at that time. I mean, it's just, there's so many examples of that. And so, people call it strategy, but it's not. It's just protecting, and it's just another form of lying. So I love that you brought that word up too.
It
You're
is,
just firing
and
on all cylinders today, Sylvia.
not really.
That's why I called you. That's why I called you armed today, because you are firing on all cylinders.
Ooh, so much pressure because I got a mean game of Yahtzee in my future. I might a little cribbage. We're throwing down with some games here. There's gonna be.
Oh my gosh, are you a board game and a card game kind of girl?
Oh, I'm a card game. I don't know about board games, but maybe table games. Yeah, Yahtzee, Uno, Phase 10, cribbage. I'm going to learn this thing called Farkle today. It sounds so naughty. It's probably some grandma game.
Okay, because I'm in a card phase. I've resisted this, by the way. I have resisted
don't. Give
this.
in.
And here's an off ramp that we always go on. But so Chris asked me, she's like, hey, we need a fourth to go play this game called Hand and Foot. And, it's just a bunch of cool ladies, and they play. And she's like, we need somebody backed out. And I said, absolutely fucking no. I am not going to play cards. It's absolutely not. I am putting my foot down. And then
what is wrong with
she kept pressing me. And then I finally said yes, but I will tell you, I will admit that I whined about it for 2 days leading up to it. And then we went to play this game called Hand and Foot. And dare I tell you, I now host it at my home, and now I play cards. And it is as simple as that. And I don't know why I resist such things.
I don't either. I think some of this is a function of being an only child who maybe because as
I'm listening.
kid, there are 5 of us, right? So I was either playing SWAT with my brothers, out running around making up games. We played cards, we played Clue, we played Monopoly, not so fun. But all cards constantly. My very first, here's the end of our off ramp. My very first savings account I opened with $10 that I won in the Moir family cribbage tournament. It's probably the only time I beat anyone in my family at cribbage. Yeah, open my first bank account, $10.
You know what? I think that, okay, so this does make sense. I think you're onto something there, the science behind it. I was an only child, so I didn't play card games. I mean, I just had my Mr. Microphone and just recorded myself singing in my closet and talking to my imaginary friend.
That tracks. Yeah. Do you even know? Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of things. When you're setting up teams with other people, do you know what this is? Okay, everybody, shirts and skins.
That's how you decipher the 2 different teams, right? Like,
you'd always be skins, but that's mostly.
Does someone take their shirt off? Is that what that is?
Yeah, that would be you. You'd be on skins, so usually shirts and skins, but you'd be the only girl on skins because you got that rockin' arm. You'd want to show everybody that and distract them.
So excuse me, people took their shirts off? That's an actual literal thing? That's like people, so that one team wore shirts and the other team took their, okay, so it's just for boys.
Shirts and skins.
This does not compute. Okay. Okay.
I had brothers, so I always said, okay, I'll be shirts. Yeah. Okay. It gets weird in college.
No, that does not compute for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a frat party.
It's a good time.
That's something entirely different. That's just a weekend in Naples, Florida.
It's like, okay, who's on the Miralax team? Who's on Miralax?
Yeah,
you little stopped up there, Betty. Right. You stopped up there, Betty. You come on to my hand and foot team. Okay, we're on the Miralax team. God, that's so funny. Okay, good to know. Funny. Okay,
we gotta bring it home. Bring
it back in.
Okay, back on the on-ramp.
Top points.
Back on the on-ramp. Okay, so I think, all right, here's what I have taken from this. And it's interesting because you really pulled me in another direction, because I thought we were going to if our like how the spotlight is on us no matter what happens, but you took it in a different direction, which I very much appreciated. So that was good. So here are my takeaways from everything that we talked about today. I think it comes down to the gap between the leader you think you are and the leader your people actually see. There's a difference there. And you think that you're protecting the organization when you're really protecting yourself, and everyone sees right through that bullshit. That's one of my takeaways. The other is you can manage the narrative. You can absolutely protect your position and call it protecting your organization. You can stay quiet when the cameras show up and tell yourself it's strategy, but people know the difference. I think they always know that. So those are some things I took from this.
Right. And I would also argue there's a cascading communication that should occur. Any leader should prepare their internal organization before it goes external. We would argue for that. And we would argue for that, although we didn't touch on this earlier. It's a real reminder for folks. And the other piece is to surround yourself with those folks that are going to give you input, that are going to challenge you. Dr. Brenda Buren, who was an assistant chief in Tempe when I was there serving, she and Angel Carbajal, David Humble, really incredibly experienced, insightful servants in policing, called me on my shit frequently, and they had permission to do it. And sometimes it stung. And however, they had a seat at the table. So if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And they had a seat at the table. We had a trusting relationship, that it was never about an individual. It's about the organization, and then broadly about the profession of policing. They had permission to challenge, permission to speak up, permission to course correct the person that was speaking, the chief executive, quite often, so that it protected the organization, even if excruciatingly uncomfortable for me as the chief. And that is the vibe that needs to take place. They were credible and wise and courageous every single time. And Brenda, she gave it to me strong.
But Sylvia, you're missing a major component of the reason that your team was able to throw spears, to speak up, is that because that is the culture that you set in what. Well, yes. But what I'm studying now in my dissertation is moments of reckoning and what I call seekers and settlers. And here's what I believe, and I need to test my hypothesis through this research, is the leaders who last are the ones, actually the ones who build something worth leading are the ones who tell the truth before they have to, the ones who admit fault before they're caught, the ones who go to people. That's why I'm calling them seekers, the ones that go to people and say, throw the spears. Here is an environment that is safe, and I'm not going to punish you for it. I'm not going to get defensive. That, to me, determines what kind of leaders are going to have longevity. And it's between seekers and settlers. The settlers are the ones that hide and hope that the scrutiny doesn't appear, and then when it does, then of course they obfuscate. So I think that the spotlight doesn't reveal the crisis; it reveals you. But that's I think the distinction that you have to make sure that people understand is that if you start speaking up against your leadership and they have not set that culture, then it's going to go nowhere. In fact, it could harm you versus help you. So what you did in that organization was give that permission for the team. So yes, and everyone did it. But as you know, the leader sets the tone for that culture. Own that.
Sure. How then does a leader assess which one they're building? Have you landed there yet? Or is that, maybe that's a future episode that's like to be continued?
Maybe.
So I want to hear really, how do you do that?
Right.
Because you do it so naturally.
That's a great question. I do think it's an entirely different topic. I think we should revisit that. But then that goes back, I think, to the work. It's the book, Speak Up, Speak Out. This is the book that I was talking about, Speak Up Culture, by Stephen Shedletsky. We call him Shed. He was a guest on my podcast, but it's all about creating environments where people can speak up. So this is what I want to.
What would they speak up about? What would they speak up about?
Literally everything. That's a whole. It's just it's just what I said. I just kind of synopsized it, but like, it's just creating the culture where it sounds so easy. It sounds so easy to say, I've created a culture where people can speak up, but we both know it's not. That is not easy at all. So
it's not. And airing a grievance is not speaking up. Bitching and complaining is not speaking up.
You know
Does he
what? I
distinguish
want to
that?
tease this episode. Yes. I also want to tease another episode because I think we need to talk about this. I was just listening to Brene Brown and Adam Grant on their podcast, and she was talking about the mouse in your pocket, the invisible army, where someone walks into your office and says, "Hey, listen, boss, everybody's really mad about this. And, we just really think that, this is a problem." And my first response to that is, who is we? Who is we? And
Who's
I've always
everybody?
found that it was like, who's everybody? And she calls it the mouse in your pocket. Who is this invisible army that is speaking? And
Okay.
that might be a great conversation to tease up, but this is the book. So I just wanted to re-record it. So I have
remind
it on
me,
there.
because the one in my organization is, hey, there's a poll going on how long this is going to occur. There's a poll about,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I said,
a
that is
survey.
such bullshit. Everybody's kind of betting how long this is going to happen or before this decision's made.
Everybody.
And
Yeah,
and I
that's all
just,
chicken shit. It's all
this is
chicken
what I
shit.
did. This is what I did. Really? I said, that's the most passive aggressive bullshit I ever heard. Just speak up, speak to the issue, and don't say there's a poll with 94 people throwing in $5. That's fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
It's
That's
such
a
a
whole
weak,
other podcast.
weak.
Yeah. Tease it. That's what we're going to talk about next.
And we're okay that Ted missed today because he's playing golf with his son.
He gets
we actually
PTO.
applaud it.
Yeah. It's in his
does.
contract. He can take a day off.
It is.
Yeah.
We
and
love you, Ted. We're
both
glad
of you.
you took today off.
Yes, we do love you, Ted. That's a nice little message to him. Hey, listen, bunnies, if you love what we're doing, show us some love, subscribe, like, review. Please spread the word about this podcast. Follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. This podcast is produced by the incomparable 10 Madden, and the music you're about to hear was written and performed exclusively for the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast by Jake Ziman and his friends Zoe and Fabian. If you don't like this podcast, move along. There's nothing more to see here. And remember, keep filling your own bunny and keep adding substance to others.
Shirts
Thanks,
or
everybody.
skins. Shirts or skins.
And also, please go watch The American President. Do it right now.
Right now. Do not delay. I take shirts. You take skins. I win.
Okay, done. Okay, bye.
Bye.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you falter, why have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny? When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all. And I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger. Failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside, but but empty within. Something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. And we all tough on the outside, but empty within. Something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monsters and